Hi, I'm Elizabeth from Art Studio Life, and today I'm going to be showing and teaching how to create a watercolor landscape painting. So grab your watercolors and come join me. Alright, so before we start the watercolor landscape painting, we'll look at what supplies will be used during this painting process. So I have a piece of watercolor paper that's about 5 by 7 inches. I have 2 cups of water here that are, one's going to be used for cleaning the brush, the other's going to be used for helping to mix the watercolor paints. My watercolor paint set here, then of course the tray I'll use for mixing colors. Then I have a size 10 round watercolor brush. You don't have to use this exact same size, whatever you have on hand will be great. And then I just have a paper towel here to use to dry up my brush whenever needed and to clean it. It's very handy to have. You can use a rag or paper towel, whatever you would prefer to use. So to start out, I'm going to first actually bring in some water into my tray here. I'm going to do about 2.5 scoops of water into that. I'm going to carefully here grab some phthalo blue. If you don't have phthalo blue, that's fine. You can use whatever blue you have on hand. So here I'm just being careful not to get my brush here into the green because we're going to be using this blue for the sky. So I'm grabbing a brush full, and I'm going to mix it here into my color. I might grab a little bit more. It should be a nice kind of rich phthalo blue color here. All right. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to clean now that color off. Now I'm actually just going to use this color straight. We're not going to mix anything else into it. Just going to use straight phthalo blue. I'm going to, and you know, you don't have to really paint up to the edges. You can kind of have a sort of white border be around the edge of this. This is kind of more of a sketch, sort of a loose watercolor painting. It's not going to be super perfect and refined. We're kind of just making something a little bit more loose brushwork here. So I have a little bit wetness on my finger, just going to dry that off. So I'm going to actually want a little bit more color. Now as I apply this, I'm going to work on getting kind of a cloud formation. I'm going to first get one here on the left side. So kind of work on getting kind of some sort of semblance of a shape of a cloud here. Actually, I might want it a little lower down. And this is also where this can be handy. Kind of if I put in too much paint in an area, I can wipe that away. Right, so now I'm going to work on this side, getting kind of a cloud shape over here as well. And you know, the clouds are they're really so you can make them in so many different shapes. They're just very interesting kind of different sort of geometries that they can have. So really have fun with this. There isn't really right or wrong shape for a cloud. So here are my clouds that I've made. I've sort of made them side by side a little bit. Maybe would have been better had I made this a little bit higher up just to give it a little bit of interest here. And I still could do that. Just wiping away some of that paint. Then I could lower this down just a little bit. All right, so now I want to be sure I'm actually making kind of soft edges with this. So and I do that by kind of wetting the outside, because clouds are very, very soft and they're very fluffy. We all know that they have quite soft edges, and we want to kind of reflect that in this painting as well. So we're kind of giving it really lovely soft edges here. Doing that on this side as well. Just kind of carefully using water, not applying too much, really just gauging and kind of, I like to use my finger to check to make sure there's not too much water. That kind of helps wipe a little bit off the paper towel before I actually apply it. But, you know, watercolors, so we can't really have, and that's the beauty of it, is that you can't really have full control over what it's going to do. And that's great. So you have as much control as you can have, and then you just let it do what it does. And that's why watercolor is just so great, because it has a spontaneity to it, and it's best to really lean into that. All right, so I'm just kind of was taking a little bit more, trying to take away a little bit more of that blue there. Okay, nice. Making those soft edges here. Oop, it's actually now I'm taking away a little too much paint. All right, so now, and you want to do that before the paint dries. That's really sort of key, is to kind of get that in before any of that happens. But I'm not really done with the sky yet. I want to kind of add some ultramarine blue to the top part. So ultramarine blue is a warmer blue color than that phthalo blue. And that's going to help kind of this top part of the sky feel like it's coming forward a little bit more, because warm colors come forward and then cooler colors recede back in space. And that's kind of important to pay attention to in landscape painting. So I'm just really adding straight ultramarine blue. It's something I never do in oil painting, but it's in watercolor. You can kind of sometimes simplify the color mixing a little bit more. I'm gonna mix these two just a bit. All right, so now we're not done with the clouds yet. We're gonna be mixing more color here. So I'm actually, before I move on, I'll soften the edge here. It's also a time thing. You need to really, you have a certain time frame to make these soft edges happen. So now quickly, I'm gonna actually grab some orange. So here's some orange on my palette. If you don't have orange, just mix red and yellow together, and then you'll get a really great orange. Oh, I didn't mean to actually grab yellow. I already have an orange. All right, so now here I'm mixing a little bit of blue into this, kind of making this muted orange color. But I want to keep it a little more orange, but not too orange. So that's why I added just a bit of that blue to mute it. Now just a very, very light amount. Super, super light. And I'm gonna apply over here. So this is kind of that shadowy part of the cloud. This is gonna help to make it just much more interesting and make it just feel more realistic. Gonna soften that edge as well here. I can add that here as well. And that really also adds a warmth to the sky. In addition, kind of amidst all this blue that's there, the cool blue colors. Add just a little bit more. So here I'm softening the edges, making use of, again, I'm being careful not to put too much water down, just enough to kind of be able to infuse that softness into those clouds. All right, so now we're gonna move on to I'm gonna make this kind of mountain sort of area that's below, that's just on the horizon. And we're gonna grab some ultramarine blue. I'm gonna bring that here where I actually have had some ultramarine blue there. Oop. Actually grabbed a little bit of that red. So I actually need a little bit more water to add to this. Gonna wash my brush, keep this clean. That's why I want to wash my brush before I put water in here. I'm gonna grab now a little bit more ultramarine blue, mix that into the pan. right, so now I'm gonna actually mix a little bit of red into this. I'm gonna grab some of my alizarin crimson that I have here. It's kind of a cool red color. It helped me make kind of a good sort of just subtle kind of purpley bluish color that I want to have. But I'm gonna mix in a little bit of yellow to mute that purple, because I don't want it to be a strong purple at all. I want it to be definitely rather more subtle, muted, because again, we're dealing with something in nature. We want it to look natural, and kind of having just slightly muted colors is much more just true to nature than it being really bright. I feel like it needed to be a stronger blue color, so that's why I mixed in more ultramarine blue there. I'm gonna mix some more alizarin crimson, get back that purpliness of the color. Clean my brush, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of yellow again, like just like before, to mute this a little bit. All right, so let's try this. Hopefully this is good color, and again, we just need this to be, we don't want it to be too big, but we want it to have a presence here. This nice mountain range, or just, I should say, hills or mountains kind of in the background. This is kind of an imaginary landscape. There's not really a right or wrong way of doing this. All right, so I'm gonna clean that, and I'm next gonna kind of soften the edge again of this mountain area. Gonna kind of wet my brush here, make sure it's not too much, and kind of really create lovely soft edges here. That'll help to just also make this recede further back in space, because sharp hard edges come forward, but softer edges kind of go back in space. So that's gonna help to create kind of this more believable three-dimensional space in the painting. All right, so there we have kind of our soft edges. If you wanted to add more color to that, you definitely could. I'm gonna move on now to, now at the bottom, I'm gonna have this field of green that's then coming forward to the front of the painting. So I'm gonna clean this area here on my mixing spot here by my watercolor palette. All right, so I'm gonna grab, again, I'm gonna first, actually, I'll clean my brush. Then I'll grab some paint, or actually some water rather, not paint, and I'll put that into the mixing area here. I'm gonna grab some of this green. It's kind of an olivey sort of green color. Put that in there. Grab a little bit more. Get some on my brush. And this is actually a nice green because it's a little more muted. It's not super saturated, kind of it's not a very bright green, I should say. But I'm gonna add some of this green as well. It's a phthalo green, so it's definitely a cool green. It has a brightness to it. And now we're gonna mute both of these, this kind of mixed olive phthalo green. If you don't have any of these colors, don't worry, just use what you have, and you could also mix your own green as well. So I'm actually gonna use some of this cadmium red here. Mix just a little bit, a little goes a long way. Actually not quite enough there, I'm gonna add a little bit more. All right, that may have been a little too much, but that's okay. Now I actually want to mix a little bit of yellow into this. And just maybe a little bit of blue for the front, or sorry, for the area that's going back, because I want it to be just a bit cooler in temperature. So I'm gonna test this out as I put it down. Okay, She would like it maybe just a little more yellowy, maybe orangey. Try that out. It's not too bad. Add just a little bit of that purple. Yeah. Just don't want it to be too warm. So you can see that's kind of a more natural green color, and it really is more believable. So I'm gonna bring it down. We're gonna add more shades of green to this, but for now I'm going to bring this down all the way here. And I'm also going to kind of soften the edge here between the two. I may have waited too long to apply this green color, but I'm gonna kind of just do what I can. And I might add just a little more purple because it dried up a little bit lighter than what I would have liked it to be. Now I can kind of soften that edge a little more, and also I'll have this be a soft edge between the two areas at the same time. All right, so now we have kind of this green field happening, kind of coming down from that mountain area. But we have more to do here. We're gonna, we want to put some warm colors here in front. And that will, again, kind of what I was talking about earlier with warm and cool colors. Cool colors recede back in space. Warm colors come forward. So we want to add something really warm here in the front part. So here I'm actually almost out of that green. I should have mixed just a bit more for myself, but that's okay because we have lots of color here. We can mix up a lot more. I'm gonna do, again, similar mixture, some of that olive green, phthalo green together. I'm gonna go ahead, wash my brush here because I'm gonna grab some orange, and it might be a little too much orange. There we go, I might grab a little more. Mix that into this, grab a little bit more orange. Then I think I'll actually grab a little bit of yellow. That green. All right, I'll try this out here. And bring this in the front. Okay, so that kind of really adds, kind of makes your eye go to the front here first. Add a little bit of orange to that. Actually may have been a little too much color there. It's okay, I can use my brush to spread it out. All right, so kind of when you get it to this point, you can kind of look at your painting and decide, okay, is there anything else I want to change, switch, leave, or that's a really good question always, is when is it the right time to stop? Because there is especially with watercolor paintings, there's a point where you really don't want to overwork it because it's there's things that you can't change, and if you kind of continue to paint on it, it's going to not look better. And it needs to have a certain sense of spontaneity to it that is really important. Now, one thing I would like to do here is actually bring kind of a line here, this a darker green line out. I feel that will really help to kind of feel more like this is a plane in front. Let's see, I'm gonna, again, I'll mix up this color here, just add a little bit of red to this. All right, so I'm gonna just add a little bit of water to that. I feel like it's a bit too heavy at the moment, so I'm gonna lighten this up here. right, so there we have a watercolor landscape painting. Thank you so much for joining me in this painting project today. If you enjoyed it, please like this video so that other people can find it. And also, don't forget to subscribe to get more painting tutorials like this. And finally, please let me know what your favorite kind of landscape is to paint. I would love to know. Till next time.